Drawing a hallway in one-point perspective. In this video, we'll cover the impact of your location on the drawing, how to set up your paper, drawing the back wall and other things not affected by linear perspective, and how to apply linear perspective to your drawing. Start by selecting the hallway you want to draw. The specific location you choose to stand or sit will determine your horizon line and vanishing point. It will impact all the angles of your drawing. Here is the same hallway from two different viewpoints. Standing to the left or right will determine how much of each wall you see. Since the left wall is relatively empty, it doesn't make sense for this to take up a lot of space in your drawing. Choosing to sit or stand will also impact the angles in your drawing. Notice how much lower your horizon line, or eye level, is when sitting. Notice how much smaller the floor appears because of foreshortening. Once you have selected a viewpoint, it's time to set up your paper. Start with a light gesture of the back wall. This will help you visualize the scale of your back wall on the paper. I'm recommending to start with a 10-inch wall placed 5 inches down from the top of the page. You can find proportions of the back wall by comparing its width against its height. Another way to confirm your proportions is by checking the angle from corner to corner. If the angles line up with the corners of the back wall that you have drawn, this is a good sign. If not, you may have some adjusting to do. Once you're happy with the proportions of the back wall, you can fill in some of the other details. You don't have to worry about drawing items on the back wall in perspective. Use a combination of measuring, intuitive gesture, and angles to add this information. I'll do things like finding the height of the doorway by comparing it to the width of the wall. Gesturally estimating the distance between objects. Finding the height of the molding on the door frame. Locating the corners of the doorways. Straightening lines. And working out the spacing between doorways. To keep the lines straight, I'll compare the width of the same area at the top and bottom of the page. Here is some comparative measuring. Checking many angles is my favorite way to find things on a page. Locating the horizon line and vanishing point. Try to visualize the horizon line by holding your measuring stick above you with an outstretched arm and lowering it until it is directly in front of your eyes. Now you can locate the vanishing point, which will be on the horizon line, by taking the angle of each of the 4 corners of your hallway and running them through the corresponding corners of the back wall in your drawing. Where they intersect will be the vanishing point. Here is that same process again, playing out in real time. The lines may not intersect perfectly, but they will give you an area in which to choose a specific point. Once you have identified a specific vanishing point, and here I am making that point as precise as possible, all of the lines in your drawing affected by perspective will converge at this point. You can now accurately define the corners on the wall, ceiling, and floor by aligning your ruler with both the vanishing point and the corner of the wall you wish to draw, and drawing a line that extends out from that corner. Applying linear perspective. Now to deal with the side walls, I'll need to work with both measuring to determine the spacing of details like doors and trim, as well as linear perspective to give proper angles to the lines receding in space. Making several comparisons, I've found that the opening of the door on the back wall is the same width as all of the doors on the right wall. And while the top of the door on the back wall is horizontal, these other doors will need to be drawn in perspective. Because their heights match, we can use the point where the trim joins to the side wall, combined with the vanishing point, to draw these angles accurately. The height of something like the molding along the floors will appear one size on the back wall, but will seem to get larger as it comes towards us in space. The same is true for the top of the door frame. Finding the spacing of the doors, walls, and trim will be important. While there is a lot of information here, I try to start with bigger measurements first, so I'll start by just trying to divide this space in half. Now I can divide this smaller section into thirds. Notice that sections parallel with the back wall will be represented with equally parallel lines. The angle of this open door, although it is at an angle, has nothing to do with the vanishing point in our one-point perspective drawing. Use your measuring stick to match the angles. The door actually extends a little further than this, to halfway through the last third of this space. The side of the trim that faces us is similar to the back wall and other planes that face us in that it is not in perspective. Use only horizontals and verticals to describe it. Continuing with measuring, I'll divide the back half of the wall into thirds. Take the next minute to watch this drawing develop in time-lapse. Finally, the tiles on the floor. You can determine the spacing by noticing that there are about 2.5 of them across the back wall. After marking their location, you can project the rows of tile forward in space by lining your ruler up with the vanishing point and grout lines. You can work out the horizontal divisions by noticing where the grout lines intersect with existing information on the right wall. I know that as the tiles get closer to me, they will appear bigger, so I'm double checking my measurements by confirming that each row of tiles is bigger than the last. I'll just put some finishing details into the door. And that's it, a finished one-point perspective hallway drawing.